Be like Berl. Be the good in the world. Be like Berl.
Hey everybody, welcome to another Be Like Berl podcast. We are looking forward to bringing you our second one. This is where we interview young adults that Jesus brought through tragedies, trials, and tribulations as children by using folks who are being like Berl. As a reminder, Berl is the main character in our series of books. The first one, Berl's New Town, came out in January. The second one, we're very excited about, Merry Christmas, Berl, will be coming out October the 1st. And so we're looking very much forward to that. I think pre-orders start around September 15th, so be looking for that. Berl teaches children how to deal with today's issues using love, kindness, and hope, which he learned, of course, from the Lord, his parents, and different characters that he meets along the way. You can visit berlsqueever.com to purchase your books, or go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble or any format to be able to, and search Berl Squeever, and you'll be able to buy it there. Also, remember to like and subscribe this channel, and make sure and please share and leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, all the social media stuff. Now to introduce our guest for today, I will pass along to Miss Rachel.
All right, so this is podcast episode number 2, and today we bring you Abby Tanner. So Abby is our daughter. We have been on our other podcast. We told you about one of our youth kids, and this Abby is actually our daughter, and also the person who kind of came up. The imagination of Berl Squeever came from her, as far as the original character. So, Abby, first of all, why don't you just tell everybody who didn't maybe read about it in the first book, where did Berl Squeever originally come from, just so that everybody knows your little connection to Berl Squeever?
Like me and Granny. Mm-hmm. Well, my grandma, who will be referred to as Granny,
Who everybody knows as Granny.
everybody knows as Granny,
The infamous.
used to drive me to school occasionally when y'all were at work.
Before you were homeschooled?
Before I was homeschooled. And so this was when I was probably in first grade. And we used to have a secret passageway, which was actually just a side road that got us to school a little bit faster. And we would take our fun little secret passageway. And while we were on our way to school one morning, we noticed a squirrel in the middle of the road, but instead of his tail like curving up like a usual squirrel does, it was laid out flat on the ground like a beaver tail. And I, being little, decided that his name should be Berl Squeever, because it's like the first letter or so of the words squirrel and beaver, but reversed. And from that point on out, anytime Granny drove me to school and we went down our secret passageway, we looked for Berl Squeever on the side of the road on our way to school in the mornings.
Yep, which is why the one of the first pages in the first book says from the imaginations of Abby and Granny and their adventurous rides to school. And it, eventually it became, I wanted to write a children's book, and it was Abby that actually was like, "Dad, why don't you just write about Berl Squeever?" I mean, we talked about him, and of course that's where he came from. And I think it's funny, we've talked in our other podcast, we've known this since our this guest since we've actually known you your entire life.
Yeah, I've known you guys my entire life too. I know it's kind of weird. You're like, Abby, tell us how Berl Squeever came to be, and I'm like, you already know this.
All right.
Do y'all have to see what we have to put it with at home? Go ahead.
Sorry, guys.
So we have like several talking points that we could talk about with you. But today, what are we primarily going to talk about today?
Probably my surgery and the experience of going through that so young, and the people that were there for me.
Okay, so for those of you that don't know, Abby had severe scoliosis at the age of 10. And so oddly enough, we noticed it on her back about the same time as her brother did, who was not her brother at the time. It was before we adopted him.
That story will come later.
Yeah, and that will be part of another episode.
Yeah.
But
to be continued.
But So she had an obvious curvature in her spine that came up rather dramatically and rather fast. I had not noticed it the month prior on a camping trip, and suddenly it was there, and it was real, and it was pretty scary.
Yeah, Abby, what was going on when we found it? Do you remember?
Me and Waylon had we had created a mud puddle of sorts for ourselves to play in, and got ourselves so dirty, covered in mud, and you were watering the garden. And so you had the garden hose in your hand, and we ran over to you while Mama was in the house, because we were saying, like, hose us off before Mama gets out here. Like, she was going to be mad, and she totally wouldn't have been. But, yeah, and then when you went to hose me off, you, like, lifted up the back of my shirt just a little bit, and that's kind of when you at first noticed. And then I heard Mama come out, and me and Waylon were still like, hurry up, Daddy, she's coming out here. And then I heard you get, like, a really serious tone and go, Rachel, can you come here for just a second? And that's when I knew, wait, something's up, because he's really serious. And then Waylon clocked it. And then Waylon said, she's probably got that scoliosis.
Because he had seen it on an episode of The Simpsons or
yes.
something.
And I straight up was like, you're full of it. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. No, he
Waylon,
did. Shockingly, he...
So she had an 85 and a 94 degree curvature. Her back made an S.
With a twist.
With a twist, yeah. Mm-hmm. And so that was in May of that year. And we urgently went to the pediatrician like the next day, and then had an orthopedic surgeon appointment within a few more days. And we were told that she was going to have essentially life-changing surgery. The sooner the better. And
do you remember being in the pediatrician's office?
I actually don't remember much from that particular doctor visit, other than her, telling me to touch my toes, and then pretty much just being like, "Yep, that's scoliosis," and that's what I remember.
That's what I was wondering if you remember, because that's what stands out in my head is the doctor having you. I mean, it was just she instantly.
Yeah, I had.
That was the fastest diagnosis she's probably ever done.
My fingers had just gotten down to my toes when she was like, "Yep, that's what that is."
And it's so weird because we all, we grew up as kids. Remember, we had to always bend over and touch our toes when we were young, and because they were looking for scoliosis when we were about that age. And of course, as kids, we were always like, "Oh, what is that? That's something that's rare."
They don't ever explain it to you,
right? No, and then to be sitting there with your daughter going through it was, man, that was crazy.
So, just because some of this I'm having to help fill in because you were so little, but we found out that you were going to have surgery. Mm-hmm. It was going to be really invasive and a really long recovery, like a year out. Mm-hmm. And so they wanted to do the surgery sooner rather than later, but because it was an 8 to 10 hour surgery, you were going to not get to have it until August, which meant you had June and July to think about having this surgery. But also basically they told us to live like you might not walk again. Mm-hmm. And so do you remember any of that? Like what stands out before you had the surgery? Is there anything that stands out to you? How were people, I guess, is this the point where we should say, was there anybody in that time period that was like Berl to you? Because the point of the podcast is that we want people to hear about people who were being like Berl, who were loving like Jesus, just by, being them and doing what they do. So is there anybody that stands out to you? You don't have to drop names if you don't want to, but you can.
Yeah. I think the person who stands out, there were so many people who were so caring and so kind and so giving in that time, just of and so willing to bring food and bring meals and show up and support and do whatever. But I feel like there's one person that really sticks out in my mind. I can't look at you because you're about to make me cry. There's one person who sticks out in my mind who I feel like went above and beyond in a sense that she didn't really have to. And of course, I'm talking about at that time, the director of the summer camp, Deb Kruger.
And she was no relation to us.
She has no relation to us. We didn't, like a lot of people, y'all grew up together, but She didn't really.
She didn't grow up
She
here.
didn't grow up here. She wasn't from around here. She was the director of the summer camp that we lived close to that I had been going to for a couple years at that point.
She was my EMR student.
She was an EMR student, and she knew our family relatively well. But again, not like I wouldn't have even called her someone who knew us closely. She just knew our family relatively well. And she was raising money, all kinds of money to help with the cost of, people having to take off work and the cost of the surgery itself. And she was really rallying together and going above and beyond at that time. And she was just such a kind person. And I think of her a lot during that, when I think back to that time.
She was unknowingly, we didn't know it, but she was making paracord braided bracelets and selling them basically nonstop around the clock. Mm-hmm. And raised enough money to cover our deductible. We had to actually pay 2 deductibles, one before July 1 and after July 1. And she raised enough money single-handedly making paracord bracelets to cover one of our deductibles for your insurance completely. And we had no idea. Mm-hmm. They presented it at church, right?
Yeah, in front of the church.
Mm-hmm. In front of church, which we had in a jar.
In a jar with a paracord top.
Mm-hmm. And we had no idea what they were doing that day. We just thought everybody was at church that day because what were we doing that day at church? Do you remember what everybody was coming together for? We all had on our Abby shirts, and they all gathered around you and prayed.
Oh yeah, prayed because it was the surgery was coming up.
Yeah, it was like the Sunday before surgery.
Yeah.
So like you said, so many people, but with Deb, additionally, besides the money, so let's take the money out of it. Mm-hmm. Not everybody can raise money for somebody, which was a huge blessing to us. But what else did she do to help make that summer so special for you?
She made sure that I got a spot at the summer camp so that I could still get to go before the surgery, because we knew that after the surgery I wouldn't be able to go for a long time.
Yeah. And we were so nervous about letting you go. I mean, we just found out that your back was twisted in this major way, and we were really nervous about letting you go, because even though they said let you live like you were invincible and you might not walk again, that's really hard to do for a parent, to let them go. But Deb assured us that she would be watching out for you, and she was there every day in the background, wasn't she? Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a testament to how hard she worked and how hard you guys worked to make sure that this summer was so filled with fun, because I still remember the night before the surgery like it was yesterday, because I almost felt shocked. Like, you would have thought that they told me the news that I was going to have a surgery that day, with how shocked I felt, because it felt like it was all just so sudden, which is just, I cannot be more grateful for. Because imagine if I had spent June and July sitting in my room doing nothing except dreading the fact that I was going to have to relearn how to walk again in a few months. But, Deb came through, and I went to summer camp and had an amazing time and had all summer to just distract myself, because, I was 10. So,
yeah.
And I'm going to say this because I don't care. So, there's we say all this about Deb and how amazing she was, and it's funny because
I was just sitting here thinking, I know what you're going to say.
Yeah, I'm going to say it. So many Christians have a hard time nowadays with gay people. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just the way it is, and we can have theological discussions on, is it a sin? Is it not a sin? Is it right? Is it wrong? Whatever. But
the fact, it doesn't change that doesn't change the fact that
she was, and I say was because Miss Deb has since passed, but she was a gay person, and I think that's what it's come from us here in a small town in the middle of the country.
And she didn't live life like you and I did, but man, she was an incredible person.
Yeah. So anybody that anybody that comes to me and says, not every Christian, most Christians were taught, the ones that really understand what Jesus was trying to do, we love one another regardless of what our past are, what we look like, anything. I mean, that's what Berl is at the center of all of it, because we're all sinners. We're all broken people, period, bar none. We are to love one another and be there for each other, right? We can have that discussion later about the theological discussion, and truth is very important, but at the end of the day, love is still, it leads everything. And that woman,
she really
loved
showed
our
us.
family. Mm-hmm. She loved our family, and she helped us through a very tough time. And I mean, I owe a lot to her, so I mean, it's, that's, I get so mad at the division right now between people. And I understand what what it's trying to happen, but at the end of the day, man, the first and foremost, Jesus told us to love God and love others. That's where we have to start. And then we can talk truth, and we can get into Scripture, and the Lord can work, what He needs to do. But
for whatever the
issue is,
yeah.
no matter whatever the issue is, because all of us are sinners, and we're all broken people, and
right.
But at the end of the day, man, that woman who faced a lot of tribulation herself, being in a small southern town, and with her background, but she didn't let it stop her. So I had to say that. We're sitting here talking about her, and I want people to know what an amazing woman she was.
Yeah. So one of the questions that we're asking is, like, what impact did it have on your family? I mean, obviously we're sitting here and we're your family, but what impact do you feel like your surgery had on your family? What can you remember the impact?
Well, there's like a lot of things that I remember kind of in pieces.
Right, which is okay. We can help fill in.
I remember how it impacted Bella.
Which is Bella's, your younger sister.
Right. We're 6 years apart. And at that time, I was 10, so she would have been 4, 5.
She hadn't turned 4 yet.
She hadn't turned 4.
She had her 4th birthday while you were in the hospital.
Right. And that's what I was going to talk about, is I remember how it impacted Bella. And in a lot of ways, Granny watched her. She was in a hotel room. She was living life.
They were calling it the Granny and Bella vacation.
She was living life. But, I mean, we celebrated her birthday in a hospital. And she, in a sense, had to watch her big sister, like, try to learn how to walk and be so, like, rail thin. And she was so little. And she may not remember any of it now. But I still worry about her sometimes, because I don't want her to see me as someone who's breakable. Do you know what I mean?
I think she learned that you were somebody indestructible because she saw you overcome so much. I mean, she sat there and watched you try to get up off the side of a hospital bed, crying in pain and having to be made to sit up so that your back didn't, lock up and your muscles get tense. I think she saw how strong you could be.
Now, remember, you got titanium in you. So, but
she's our girl of steel.
She is. And it, if anything, it showed how much stronger she was than we were. Much stronger Abby was. And
you especially.
Oh, my goodness. I was, it was, as a dad, to especially, Abby being my firstborn, being my little girl, being the most like me, I guess, it absolutely ripped me to shreds. Down. I mean, I had the hardest time. Her mother, Rachel, did fantastic. Being right there with her, by her side, making sure she was walking, making sure she was doing her therapy, making sure she was taking her medication. I was just a basket case. I mean, it was killing me seeing her be in pain. I mean, that was hard for me to stomach.
But, so impacted your family. We, just to kind of catch everybody up a little bit, you were going to be down for a year. Mm-hmm. Recovery was considered a full year. Mm-hmm. You were wheelchair bound you were bed bound for, other than like your exercises and your PT, for like 3 months. Mm-hmm. Wheelchair for 3 months after that. Those kind of things.
Right. It was slow.
It was a slow process.
It wasn't like a Well, it wasn't like a rubber band, it wasn't just like you spring back afterwards.
Right.
Which was weird. And I think that was, being so young, the hardest part to comprehend was like,
It's not like a fever that breaks in 3 days.
why can't I just get better? And that was so frustrating.
And so during that time, especially after rods were not placed, something wasn't right. We went back in for second surgery. Rods broke, a whole nother surgery. During that recovery, 2 weeks in the hospital, like Lindy talked about on her podcast, everybody had to go back to work, right? Except Mom and you. Of course, I couldn't work. Obviously, I wouldn't have wanted to anyways, but I couldn't because you had to have around-the-clock care. And during that time, just me and you in a hospital room, how did that go? Like, do you remember how just
Stir crazy?
stir crazy and started to get like a little depressed and sad, and you felt like what? You were never gonna...
It felt like at some point there was a point of no return.
Right.
I was in a hospital bed, and then even when I was finally, released from the hospital and got to go home, I found myself right back in the hospital bed again shortly after, because of a lot of things. But but I found myself right back in the hospital, and I think the second time I was in the hospital was where it hit me worse, because that was more of a feeling of hopelessness, a feeling of, I thought that this was over. I thought I wasn't going to have to be back in here yet.
Felt like you were never going to get better.
Right. It felt like I was never going to get better. And a part of me, I think because I've always been an anxious child, I felt bad for, like, you. And you never made me feel bad, but I just did. You had to be there all the time. I mean, you had to, if I wanted to move, you had to be over there to help me. If I wanted to go to the bathroom, you had to be there and help me do everything and shower and wash my hair. And I felt bad for you, and I felt bad for Dad having to help me through everything. And I felt bad for Bella, who wasn't getting as much attention as a 4-year-old maybe needs from her mom and dad, And it was frustrating because I couldn't do anything on my own. And I wanted to so bad to be able to just, oh, it's okay, Mom, I got it this time. And I couldn't make myself heal any faster. And that was just so frustrating.
So I think one thing that we probably take for granted is, like, as adults, we probably are in like this, like, I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do this, and I got to get you better. But we don't take into consideration, like, the fact that you feel bad for what's going on, and you wish you could do better. And so that takes a toll on your mental health as much as maybe even the illness itself, especially when you went from everything you were doing to now can't literally do anything without somebody.
And we don't, going back to Bella not getting the attention, she has since made up for that. Yeah. So
she's the center of attention everywhere.
Yeah. She is now fixing to turn 13 and, ruler of the world. But, it was, as a family, it was extremely difficult. It wasn't, not because it was anybody's fault at all. It was the hand we were dealt. And so having to see, I still, man, it still haunts my dream, and I don't know if I can talk about it, but when we took her in there the day of her surgery, and we had to take her into, pre-op? And so we went in there, and she was having to go get ready to head to the surgery and stuff, and she was in the little pre-op room, and she started getting scared. And of all the things a dad hates to see on his children, it's fear. But number one, a dad cannot stand the thought of their child being scared. There was nothing I could do at that moment. And so...
except pray.
Except pray. Just latch on to Jesus was the only thing I could do. He kept us standing for sure. And then they came in and they gave her a little medicine to help her just kind of relax. And of course then we started laughing because she had the giggles and stuff. And
it was like,
and I remember her being wheeled out in the chair, and then you and I just broke right in the middle.
So
of
one
that.
thing I think, while you were in surgery, we had our preacher and a couple of church leaders come up and pray with us. We had a lot of Pawpaw's family came up and prayed with us. Some of your family came up. I mean, we just had all these different people that were like, we're here, we're praying. And our family's Facebook was just filled with pictures of everybody in our church praying. I mean, just everybody was praying for you, for the surgery, for strength. I mean, we had so many Berls out there, right? Like, we had so many people that were just, even though they couldn't be there physically, they were praying for us.
There was one Berl in particular that was dressed up as a TEMA district coordinator.
I was just thinking about him.
That came up, which is for those of you that don't know, in my life at emergency management, it was a coworker trip. I don't care. I mean,
Who didn't believe in Jesus.
Yeah, we had a difference of opinion when it came to religion and God, but he was there. And I think for me,
He was being like Berl and being like Jesus and didn't even know it.
And I think this story, Abby, I think your story for me has helped me in my life with people who are different than me. Someone that, like Miss Deb, who is a gay person, and you have Tripp, who at the time was an atheist, and both of them, Jesus worked through them, with love, and I mean, they showed so much love and stuff, and it was great.
We've talked about how people were like Berl, and they were, just loving on you, being kind to you, making sure you had a great summer, just kind of keeping you busy. One thing that seems to be a connection between your testimony and Lindy's is that you guys were both plugged into a church, and being plugged into church, for Lindy, it kind of gave her some normalcy, and an outlet for, people that she could hang out with and didn't really kind of talk about her, not that kind of stuff. Like, they understood what she was going through. And for you, it was also a place that we found comfort and peace and people that pointed us to Jesus. But then there were probably people out there that were not like Berl. And sometimes people just don't know. And that's part of this podcast too, is for us to kind of explain to people kind of a what not to do.
Right.
So what are some things that you would say was not like Berl that you experienced in your situation?
I definitely go back to the months when I had to use a wheelchair. And, there were the months soon after where I was more wheelchair bound. And then there were anytime we were doing a strenuous activity where I wasn't as wheelchair bound, but I got tired so easily that we would have to bring it because I couldn't stand and wait in the long lines, or I couldn't walk around as much without needing breaks.
And that went on for a good 18 months or 2 years or something.
About 2 years of that feeling of my shoulder blades and lower back hurting and becoming tired.
Which they said was all normal. It just took time.
But
There was a Disney World trip in the midst of all that.
Because that's a whole nother podcast probably.
But yes, I think that the only people I can think of that really, so to speak, didn't act like Berl were actually kind of similar to the people who weren't like Berl in the book, and that a lot of it was out of ignorance. A lot of it was out of just not knowing. And what I mean by that is being wheelchair bound, not permanently, but having to have one. And I could still stand, and by all means, when I was sitting in the wheelchair, I looked fine. I was 10 or 11 years old. I had all of my limbs. I was just sitting in a wheelchair, and people would look at me, and then they'd look at me stand up when I needed to and sit back down. And I got some funny looks, and I got some whispers over the shoulders, and, people turning to the side. And I was embarrassed. I was 11 and I was wheelchair bound, and I was embarrassed to be in a wheelchair because I felt like people thought that I didn't deserve to be in a wheelchair. And then it made me think, well, maybe I don't deserve to be in a wheelchair. Maybe I'm actually just making a bigger deal of this than it has to be. And meanwhile, I was only a year out from a major surgery, and I was embarrassed because I needed help.
2 major surgeries.
2 major surgeries. And once again, it's not like anybody was doing anything to be rude or to sabotage me or anything crazy like that. But you never know someone's story, kind of like what we talked about with Deb. You never know what's going on, and you never know why someone may need a wheelchair. You never know why somebody may need a cane or any kind of medical equipment assistance. You don't know why. And if you find yourself thinking like, well, they don't need that. They're just being dramatic, or they just look, that's a little kid. They don't need that. That might be a time to pause and think, am I being like Berl? Am I being open-minded? Because I don't know their story. And I don't, they might very well need that, like I did.
It's because it's so quick to judge, and all of us do it. Every human does it, you know, and reminding them that, hey, you have no idea what they're going through at that point, you know. So keep your judging to yourself, you know, and just remember that, you know what, I don't know what's going on in their day. I don't know what's, and it's just, it transcends to anything, you know. Someone acting like a jerk in traffic, you know, and you get mad all of a sudden, and you want to judge, and you know, what kind of idiot are they? And then you got to remember, you know, you don't know what's going on in their life right there. And that was always a granny thing. You know?
It was a granny thing. She just keeps coming up.
You don't know what's going on. We're all children of God. You don't know what's going on. And so, and she's right. You know, she's absolutely right. But yeah, that's what I think about, you know, and you saying that is just, man, just, you don't know what's going on. So just don't just go on. You know, don't worry about it.
So Lindy's podcast really related people to grief and loss and how that can almost tear your family apart. And then Janie and Aaliyah's podcast will be about, the family kind of trauma that they went through with drug use and divorce. Your podcast is going to lean on people that are going through something major medically, especially as a child. And there are going to be children to relate to you who went through something major medically. And yes, your surgery was only 8 to 10 hours the first time and 8 to 10 hours the second time, but your recovery was a year plus. And there's going to be kids that go, man, I didn't even have surgery that was 8 hours, but you know, I was down for 2 weeks during the summer, best time of my life for tonsil surgery or whatever. and that's it was traumatic to them, you know, like they're a kid. You don't know. You cannot, as a parent, you cannot tell your child enough how much pain they're going to be in. They're not going to be ready for it. We told you how much pain you were going to be in, but you had no idea what it was going to be like. And it's hard to comprehend a year in recovery because you're a kid who's like, whatever. Yeah, I'll be better. Give me 2 weeks. I'll be better.
Right.
Somebody else that comes to my mind though, on being like Berl for you is you had several little friends, Anna and Claudia, who came by, and they were friends. So we kind of expected that. I know you talked about Miss Deb, who we didn't expect. But I will say, as a mom, it's taught me to encourage my kids to like reach out to that kid, because when your friends reached out to you, it almost brought the life back in you. You know, your cousins, and you had cousins that would come by and stuff like that, and it literally breathed life back into you some days.
Oh, there would be. I would not see her when she would be with Claudia, and Claudia would be here, who is her best friend, and she would be pushing her up and down the hallway in the wheelchair, and they're both dancing to music. She would be laughing and smiling and joyous like she hadn't been in a long time.
Yeah. So we talk about the podcast being like Berl. I do think you picked a really great person to talk about who doesn't necessarily live her life like us, but loved like Jesus did. And to talk about and to tell about what she did. And we know that your situation was the big medical thing. What is some advice that you would give to a kid going through something medical like this that's causing a situation that they're having to go through? What would be some advice that you would give to them?
I think that it would just have to be, don't lose hope. Even if you're going through something right now that for whatever reason, you'll never get back to 100%. Like, I'll never be able to touch my toes again, or I'll never be able to go bungee jumping.
Or do a back bend.
But I am so happy, and I feel so good, and I can walk and be joyous, and I'm living life right now, and I love it.
So don't let it get you down.
So don't, even on days when you're back in the hospital, or even on days when you're, in a lot of pain, physically or mentally, and you're thinking to yourself, this is it. I can't come back from this. Yes, you can. I promise you can. And even if you don't come back physically to your, whatever normal would be, so to speak, you'll live and you'll learn to love whatever your new normal can be.
Yeah, and a lot of that comes through prayer, and not just you praying, but like everybody around you praying for you.
Right.
Yeah. So what does the future for Abby hold? A girl who had a major medical procedure at 10 years old and a year of recovery, and lots of crazy things happened during that time. What does the future hold for a girl like you?
What you doing now? Tell us what you're doing now.
LIVIN.
Living life?
Yeah.
So tell us, Abby's just recently got married. Mm-hmm. She got married, and what do you do at church now? Lindy talked about music, so what do you do?
Well, a few things. I'm the church secretary. That's my job. I'm also a barista. I love being a barista and making coffees. I love coffee. And, but my love is music. And I'm on the worship team at church and in a band and, just singing.
You don't have to touch your toes to play piano.
Singing all the time.
All the time.
I was threatened not to sing while anybody else was talking during the making of this podcast.
It's very hard for her with a mic to her mouth to not sing.
It's very hard for her not to sing when she doesn't even have a mic.
I keep having to remind myself not to hum anything because I keep trying to hum. But
And what about school? Tell her about your schooling.
Well, I just finished not just finished, but I finished my freshman year of college, and I'm going on to get my Associates of Applied Science in Paralegal Studies.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
So just praying for where God leads you. Mm-hmm. It's kind of what Lindy said, just things that inspired her along the way, and you've been inspired along the way, and we're just so thankful that God saw you through all of that and our family through all of that, through people and through prayers and through people being like Berl. And so I think Daddy's going to sum us up, just reminding everybody that book number 2 comes out October 1st and pre-sales are mid-September.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for spending time with us today. We look forward to being with you on the next episode of the Be Like Berl podcast. Just everybody try to remember to stay safe, be like Berl, and God bless.